It's so easy, I think, to treat books like items on a checklist,
Oh, 100%.
especially in this age of productivity hacks.
Yes. But what if instead of just finishing books, we could actually, like, use them to transform ourselves?
Right.
That's what we're digging into today with John Brooks's article. Reading hundreds of self-improvement books is a terrible idea.
Yeah, and the title's a little deceptive, right? It's not that we're anti-self-help here.
Right, of course not.
It's more like, however many books we do end up reading, how can we make sure we're getting the absolute most out of them?
Yeah, exactly. So Brooks actually starts out, his journey's really relatable. He starts as a film student
Okay.
and kind of like thinks he has it all figured out, you know?
Don't we all, though? But that's often like the first nudge towards learning is that you think you have it figured out.
Totally.
And then you realize, oh, there's this crack,
Yeah.
and my curiosity can actually seep in now.
Exactly. And so Brooks, he talks about how his cousin introduced him to like this idea of learning from experts through books,
Mm-hmm.
and it just opened up this whole new world for him.
Yeah.
But then, like many of us, he gets a little carried away, starts diving into all these reading lists,
Oh, yes.
trying to absorb everything at once.
Right. Because we get caught up, I think, in the what we're reading
Yes.
rather than the why behind it.
Yes.
And it's like that Elaine de Botton quote, most of what makes a book good is that we are reading it at the right moment for us.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So it's less about the specific book and more about what's going on for you in your life when you happen to pick it up.
So all those impressive reading lists we see people share,
Absolutely.
they're just a snapshot, like what that person needed in that moment.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it's going to be the right fit for me right now.
Exactly. And that leads into one of Brooks's biggest points, which is that books aren't trophies. You're not collecting them.
Oh, interesting.
They're tools to be used. It's not about, like, getting to the end.
Okay, yeah.
It's about what do you then do with that information?
Right.
How do you apply it? It's like knowledge is power. More like applied knowledge, that's where the power is.
Yeah, you got to put those mental reps in, for sure. It actually reminds me of this time I tried to speed read a whole book, or at least I told myself I was speed reading.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, I could barely remember, like, the main characters' names,
Right.
let alone, like, any big life lessons. It was like trying to gulp down a gourmet meal
One bite.
in one bite. Yeah. You consume something, sure, but did you taste it?
Yeah. And Brooks actually talks about that. He says that speed reading is to comprehension what cramming is to learning.
Ooh, I like that.
You might pass the test, but it's not going to stick.
Yeah, makes sense.
He brings in this great analogy from Stephen King, talking about the craft of writing,
Yep.
how much goes into choosing every single word to create a certain effect.
Yeah.
And when we speed read, we basically just bulldoze right over all of that.
Right, we miss the nuance.
Totally. Like skimming along the surface of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might see a little bit of the sunlight, but all the good stuff, that's down below.
Totally. And some books, they just need to be absorbed slowly, like sentence by sentence.
Yeah.
Brooks talks about how Jordan Peterson described reading Nietzsche beyond good and evil specifically.
Oh, wow.
And Peterson was saying how every sentence is like a bomb that's supposed to explode your preconceptions.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if you try to speed read that, it's like trying to put out a bomb with a fire hose.
Right. It's not going to work.
Total mess. And that kind of leads to another point that Brooks makes, which is it's not enough to just have knowledge in your head. You have to embody it.
Okay. Yeah.
He uses the example of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
You can watch all the videos you want, right? But until you get on that mat and actually grapple with somebody,
Right.
it's just theoretical.
Yeah.
And I think reading is similar. It's like you need that real-world resistance to actually test if you know what you're doing.
It's like that Bruce Lee quote, right?
Mm-hmm.
I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So it's about taking that one thing and really mastering it.
Yes, through application.
Yes.
And that's the difference between like just passively consuming information and creating something.
Right.
Which I think it's so easy to get like stuck in the consumption loop these days.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's just so much out there.
Yeah.
But Brooks talks about notebook knowledge.
What's that?
It's basically, like Seneca even said this, it's almost disgraceful because it's knowledge that you're not using.
Ah.
You're just taking it in, but you're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, like having a garage full of tools but never actually building anything.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we get out of that? How do we go from consumer to creator?
Well, Brooks gives us a kind of a roadmap.
He lays out these like 8 reading rules, but
Yeah.
they're not like, speed read a book a day kind of things.
Right.
It's more about building like a deeper relationship with the books.
Yeah, shifting our mindset from quantity to quality.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one of his rules is actually read at whim.
Really?
Yeah, like ditch the guilt. If a book's not speaking to you, put it down, come back to it later.
Interesting.
Or don't.
So it really is about finding that right book, right time.
Yes. What we find meaningful, it changes as we change.
Totally.
Oh, and he's also big on rereading,
Mhm.
especially books that have like really resonated in the past.
Oh, yeah.
It's like revisiting a place you loved as a kid, right?
Yeah.
You notice different things as you grow up.
Absolutely. You bring a new understanding each time.
Yeah. Okay, but back to active engagement. Brooks is all about doing something with what you read. Talk about it, argue with the author in the margins,
Oh, I like it.
but most importantly, like, use it to fuel your own creativity. He uses this analogy of, like, chess manuals. You can study the moves all day, but it's not real chess until you're out there playing the game.
Exactly. You got to get out there and apply it, see what happens.
And that's how you go from being, like, a student of these books to becoming a teacher, a creator.
Right.
Someone who doesn't just understand the information, but can share it in their own way.
It's about finding your voice
Yeah.
in the middle of all those voices that have influenced you.
Yes. And, for all this talk about, like, wisdom, knowledge, application, Brooks doesn't want us to lose sight of something else, too.
What's that?
The joy of reading.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to pick up a book just because...
Just to get lost in the story.
Exactly. To escape, to have fun. Sometimes you just need a good story.
100%.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive on John Brooks, what's one book that's really stuck with you? And how can you apply it more in your own life, starting today?
Yeah, that's a great question to think about.
Because it's not just about reading anymore, right? It's about participating in this, like, giant conversation of ideas
Exactly.
and making it your own.